right. Hey, John.
Hey guys, it's great to see you again.
Good to
Really
see
good
you.
to see you again. Like really good to see you again.
Really good. Yeah. Yeah. So we're doing this video um, to help promote and let everyone know about the dialectic and the Dialogos circling course that's coming up October 1st and 2nd. So it's
Yes.
October 1st and 2nd. I think it's going to be our 4th course that we've done.
Yeah, I think it's fourth. Yeah.
We're
Yeah, that's
teaching
right.
it. We're teaching it along with Christopher, and there is a discount that is good until this coming Saturday.
Right.
So I think it's like a $50 discount. So if you know that you're going to do it, go ahead and sign up. It's before Saturday to take advantage of that. And after that, I think the course is $250 and it's $195 right now.
Right. Right.
So this is so we'll get this out just in time so everyone can kind of find out about that. And last time we had a bunch of people say that they hadn't heard about it. So I'm trying to do a little better job of getting the word out. So if you see this video, and please share it to all of your your accounts and Facebook and all this stuff, all the places where the people are, so we can get the word out. So we really appreciate that. So I wanted just to cover a little bit of the logistics of what the course is, a little bit of what it looks like. And then I wanted to talk with you, John, about go into a couple of things. You're in the middle of filming After Socrates.
Yes.
Right, which is a whole series on essentially dialogos, right?
Yes.
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 And I'm curious. I'm super curious to hear about all the connections that are have come through that. And also, you've been doing a lot of field work, right? You've been traveling a bunch. I know that you went to Vermont, and especially I want to talk with you about what you learned out there in terms of the ecology of practices and the layering, and what you discovered by kind of being live in the retreat.
We also should talk about what happened in Washington State when I went to Rafe Kelly's Return to the Source.
Yeah.
Because I taught dialectic into dialogos and philosophical contemplation to them in the midst of their ecology. And so I want to talk about that too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot happening right now. I'm very excited about all of it, but do the logistics first.
Yeah, totally. So basically this is a deeply experiential course. You don't have to have any there's no prerequisites in terms of knowing philosophers, or you don't have to have any degrees. You don't need to know any of that kind of stuff, right? This is about actually the practice of philosophy, the experience of it, and what we're and is John's term, an ecology of practice is what it's based on.
Yes.
Dialectic and the dialogos is, you could say, the culmination of the practice, but it's really an advanced practice, and it's layered on top of so many different things. The first thing that we do is mindfulness, right? Then we go into philosophical contemplation.
Yes.
Then we go into circling, which is intersubjective meditation, right? And then we go into dialectic and the dialogos, right? Which is all of those and builds on them and blossoms them. Yeah,
very much. And we've been paying very careful attention to the feedback, and we constantly are tweaking. It's very much still a work in progress, but it's doing all of this, really getting how to properly get that scaffolding going and a momentum. And we keep getting amazing feedback, and many people are also actually commenting, because people take it usually more than once, and they'll comment on the improvements we've made and how sort of effective they are. I'm very excited about this project. It's very dear to my heart, and so I'm very happy that we're going to be doing this again soon. it's going to be so cool because we're going to be doing this probably very close to when the documentary film about my work comes out, in which I do a demonstration. At least I think it's part of it will be in the film of Dialectic into Dialogos with Johannes Niederhauser. More importantly, close to when After Socrates is going to be coming out. And so doing this course before After Socrates the two will just sing to each other.
Yeah.
The two will just sing to each other so much. So I'm very excited about how all of this is really taking on a life of its own. So I'm very enthusiastic about all of this right now.
Totally. It seems too, John. I remember our first conversation. It was probably 3 years ago now at this point. But
Yeah.
one of the kind of the big, I don't know, connecting points, it felt like, or the insights was, I think we both got how deep your work has to do with relationship, right? Like the culmination of your work, the discovery of your work, the motivation of your work is deeply wedded to connections, dialogue, and relationship. And I remember that there was just something special about kind of having that recognition with you in that first conversation about just how deep that goes. And it kind of, I was just flashing to that, and it kind of feels like, I know it wasn't like the first time you thought of that or anything like that, but there was something new about it that glowed or came together. And I think that was kind of the beginning of the notion of dialogos, right?
Very, very much. I mean, so yeah, a notion I actually developed in After Socrates is ratio religio, getting the properly proportioned connectedness.
Yeah.
And that the whole dialectic and the dialogos tradition is about, and these connections, connection with yourself, and they're all interwoven and interdependent and interporting. Connection with yourself, connection with others, and connection with reality. Those are the connections that enhance meaning in life, the connections that help you overcome significant ways in which you could be falling into sort of self-deceptive, self-destructive patterns, and also enhancing the sense that your life is meaningful. And so one of the things you pronounced it first, and but I sort of leapt on it like a tiger, is you said, well, wait, circling does the philia, the getting of the fellowship relationship, and then what dialectic into dialogos is we turn that philia onto Sophia. And instead of talking philosophy, we give people the capacity to actually cultivate the individual and shared love of virtue and wisdom as something that as transformatively experiential. And that's what people talk about. They talk about, I discovered kinds of intimacy that are not sexual and not friendship or familial, but this other kind of intimacy with myself and other people and with reality that I didn't know, but I've always been hungering for. And so, yeah, I mean, it is absolutely essential that we're trying to get people to recover communication as communing, as not just the exchange of information, but being in right relationship, rather than just holding right beliefs or asserting the right argument.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just being informed, but being transformed.
Exactly. And ultimately, we are not suffering from a lack of information. We're suffering from the opposite.
Right.
What we need is the transformation to give us the discernment we need in order to track what is most real in all of that information.
Yeah, totally. So John, I'm curious about what you, when you did is it we call it parquet?
Parkour.
Parkour, yes.
So let me so first of all, a major shout out to Rafe Kelly and also the other instructors. Return to the Source was one of the most transformative experiences of my life. A very powerful ecology of practices. There's parkour, martial arts, meditative practices, nature connection practices, imaginal practices. And then they had me teach. In addition to teaching some Tai Chi Chuan, I taught philosophical contemplation and dialectic into Dialogos. And Rafe and I also did some important discussions in which Socrates and Plato played pivotal roles. And this what it was really challenging for me because I was in a situation in which I was at a tremendous disadvantage with a lot of the people. I'm 60 and I'm there with a bunch of 20 somethings. Now they were wonderful people, and so many of them that were there because I was there and they wanted to be able to talk to me. But it was definitely I wasn't so I mean the martial arts start I was very good at because the Tai Chi training was prepared me very, and the meditation stuff and that, but the parkour and some of the other stuff,
jumping out of
so
trees and
rocks especially,
yeah.
and I got seriously injured. I mean, this arm was purple all the way up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I really I knew I was going to get seriously injured. By the way, that is not to tell you to not do this.
Yeah.
What Rafe is doing, like, you just have to set yourself, because, and I was cut and I was banged up, and my ego was shattered because I'd be sort of clambering over rocks in this clumsy fashion, and worried about seriously, and Rafe's daughter would be just sort of boing, boing, boing past me, and she's just, I was like wow, and his son is but what happened, and Rafe and the instructors and a lot of the students came up to me afterwards and they said, you're not good at this, but you are dogged. You keep showing up and you keep putting yourself into scary situations, right, and going through it. And I'm saying that because I hope this is justified. I'm really proud of that. It's different. It's a different kind of, I was by no means the best or anything like that. But the fact that, and that's part of what that is. It's an amazing, like, it's perfectly pitched so that everything is like really challenging but doable because of the facilitators and the teachers.
Yep.
And you're supported in terms of the virtue of your performance, as opposed to just sort of objective measures of how well you're doing something. And so what happened is, I sort of earned everybody's trust. And then we went in and we did these practices. And I did the paraphrasing practice with them too, to get them warmed up. So I did the philosophical contemplation, the paraphrasing practice, and then we did dialectic into Dialogos. And the response to all of those was very powerful, very powerful. And for some of them, it was unexpected. So it was very interesting because this was a real test case. It was a real test case because we're normally doing this course and everybody's in their comfortable place and it's all on Zoom. This is in person. This is literally in the wilderness, and we're in this very different set of circumstances. We're in the middle of a very demanding course, and yet it really resonated. It really took hold. That had a and so the other instructors wanted, like, one of the instructors asked me to teach him Lectio Divina because he wanted to pick up on some of the other practices. So that was that was very, very significant. And so more and more seeing the flexibility of this as a meta practice that can fit into like a very alive and powerful and transformative ecology of practices. And I want to thank Rafe again. And I want to recommend Return to the Source in his other retreats very strongly. And the other thing that was going on is that David Fuller and Chris Altoff were there, and they were filming the documentary. So
it's going to be in the documentary. Some of that's going to be in the documentary. Wow. This is all weaving together. This is great.
Yeah, very much so. Right.
I would imagine. So I would imagine. Well, a couple of things. I like that you shared about the challenge of it, but also what was praised is not like the measurable outcomes, but the virtue that you were exercising, right? And so it's like, even though like everyone was younger and you weren't as coordinated and you banged
Yeah,
yourself up and stuff like that, I would imagine that it was the courage to do something,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, I first of all, I mean, I deeply respect. I mean, Rafe is a very important person for me, and
Yeah,
so I was, and then I very quickly, Kyle and Aaron and Robert, um, I very quickly came to trust them,
yeah,
and then the Socratic training really, I mean, there's no way to say it, and you know, I can see people just easily dismissing it, but I'm just going to say it straight out. The Socratic training enabled me to do it. That's what it came down to. That's really what it came down to.
yeah,
And so and 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 to get to, I wanted to do it because I wanted to put myself through that test.
right,
And yeah, and so
right,
that was just uh, and then I went. Oh, and by the way, the perspectival knowing and the participatory knowing that are so important to dialectic and to dialogos, they were so important for everybody
yeah, yeah,
at return to the source. Like, just get that everybody kept saying the vocabulary, and this was so helpful for understanding the
yeah.
practices and what's going on. So that was deeply, deeply
The
resonant.
vocabulary. So you're doing this as
Yeah,
you're talking about the
yeah,
vocabulary. It's funny. I kept getting the sense of you kind of grabbing rocks, right? And this, I would imagine, did people start to draw a lot of the parallels between when they were doing dialectic dialogos there to the actual exercises that you guys were doing and the physical
yeah.
activity?
So
You could kind of
people,
like,
yeah,
you could feel
yeah,
how
people.
they,
Oh, and I wanted to tell you something else. Because you and I and Chris have been discussing that two-person practice.
yep,
I did that there as well. But it was something interesting, because what I had them do is I had them do the practice, not just in general, but about this day that had a really challenging and pivotal event in it. And they did, and a lot of people said that really also was a powerful thing. So
yeah,
we might want to, I'm sorry, I don't want to be too cryptic, but I don't want to give away stuff until
yeah.
we've worked it out. But Guy and Chris and I are also putting together ideas for sort of a second tier course to
Yep.
build on the first one. And so I put one of those into participant experimentation to see how that worked. And
Oh, wow.
also worked very well.
Okay, good. Well, that one's coming. We'll
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
announce
yeah.
we'll announce that when that's nailed down. Oh, wow. So and then you also went to Vermont, right?
Well, in between, so uh, uh, and remember all the positive things I said about Return to the Source. In between, I went from Lord of the Flies in Return to the Source, and then Sarah and I went to Tuscany, Italy, in one of the most amazing resorts in the world for the Symposium on Embodiment. And I met Charles Stang, who wrote the Divine Double, and I got to talk to him
No
about
kidding.
dialectic logos and the aspirational relationship to your future self. And he said that was an amazing conversation, and he said that was a very good interpretation of his work. So I got it, and so him and I have really clicked. Yeah, yeah, him and I have really clicked. And so you know, we're going to be doing work together. He heads up the Harvard Initiative for Transcendence and Transformation. Amazing guy, just amazing.
Wow.
And I get my conversation with him, and I gave a talk there, and very, very well received, very powerfully received.
Wow.
And then I came back, and then Sarah and I both had COVID. So we did that for a few days.
Okay.
Luckily, I was quadruple vax, so it didn't last very long.
Right.
And then I went to Vermont, and Rafe was there again. And what we were doing in Vermont was we were getting many of the leaders of these emerging communities of practice to enter into deep discussion. And there was a lot of invocation of dialectic into dialogos, and
Right.
people were, and it kept happening, and especially dialogos. And it was very, very powerful, unexpectedly so, not to besmirch any of the people. But I was worried, we're coming from different backgrounds, but it was wonderful and productive. And it was a big thanks to the community there. It was the Maple Monastic Academy there, and just amazing. And so that too was deeply hopeful and encouraging to me, that that this kind of thing can help to build a community of communities, create a viable subculture for responding to the meaning crisis. So did that too.
So everyone, even though it came from different backgrounds, and I know that different people, when they've created a body of work, can oftentimes get really dug in or defensive about their work and other things. So it sounds like this was not the case.
Well, so they had to be committed to the commitments was, respect, and basically humility. And one of the to dialogos, they had to commit to dialogos, that they were going to engage in dialogos.
Right.
So I didn't do a lot of the formal dialectic into dialogos, but I did a lot of the informal and sort of bringing that in. And we had some of the monks actually observing some of the ones where I was especially really trying to get dialogos into shape, and it would take fire. And they were like, wow, that's real. Like, and
so they can recognize it. They can recognize when the logos catches, which is a big important thing about this that we didn't really mention. That I think it's probably important to mention is that when we say dialogos, right, what we're distinguishing something that you can set the conditions for, right, but you can't actually will. You can't. Right, it's similar to like you can plant it, you can plant a garden, you can set up all the conditions for the garden, but at the end of the day, you don't actually grow the garden. The garden grows itself in some sense. And so the dialectic, right, is something like shaping the garden, getting the right conditions down, right, the attunement and all the layers of practices that we do beforehand. And then by an act of grace, if the spark catches and the dialogos happens, that's where you could say that the everyone involved in some sense kind of merges with the logos, right? And you start to say things that you didn't know that you knew, right?
That's right. You get this collective flow state in which people are experiencing insights that they know they could not have experienced on their own. And I'm sure everybody who's watching this video has had those conversations that have taken on a life of their own and taken everybody into a place they didn't expect they would get to, and had an impact on how they saw the world in some significant way. Well, what we're trying to do is take that and afford it more and explicate it more and cultivate it more.
Totally. Absolutely. So that was really that's really interesting. So it's like, so the people who have been developing these kind of ecology of practices, right, were able to come in and attune to the dialogos, right, and can be vulnerable to it and open to it and catch fire. It caught with them. That's really encouraging.
It caught fire for me. All of these people here were amazing, but I was coordinating something with basically a discussion between Steve March from Alethea Coaching and Zach Stein, right? And we were talking about sort of wisdom and the qualities of the wise person, but also various kinds of transformation. Now that was happening, right? And before that, I had given a talk about my work on relevance realization, and a monk had asked me a question, and I had answered it. And I do not know where that answer came from. It just sort of came out of me
Yeah.
spontaneously. And then that got taken into the discussion with Zach and with Steve. And then later on, I've recorded the video with Steve, and I'm going to release it.
Right.
Followed up with, but this idea that relevance realization can come to the place where it realizes, because it's always recursively interested in itself, where it realizes that it itself is irrelevant. And where would relevance realization realize that it's irrelevant? When it is addressing being as such and the ground of being.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And right. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
But that makes so much sense of the phenomenology and the cognition and you know, and Zach and I always had this gap, because I had all this stuff about relevance realization, altered states of consciousness, higher states of consciousness, all of that. And then I had stuff over here about, you know, these experiences of the ground and one and scientia intuitiva. But there was this spark between them, and it just boom, right?
Right.
And what I'm saying is, it emerged dialogically, both in my interaction with the monk, and then in the interaction with Steve and with Zach, and then again with Steve. And so I experienced exactly that. And so again, it's like, it's hard to convey. That's just one example of many of these that many people had in Vermont. I have to thank Nathan Vanderpool for putting it together and organizing it. And like I said, the Maple Monastic Academy, just a beautiful monastery, beautiful grounds, beautiful people. So yeah, it's just like, when those moments happen, you get, and this is not hyperbole, and many people say this even in the course, right? You get a sense of the sacred that is viable for you again. It doesn't have to be connected to a supernaturalistic metaphysics that you don't find, you know, relevant or plausible, but you get this direct sense of a sacred connectedness to the depths of yourself and others, and like where intelligibility springs from. That these are I don't know, like they are the things that empower us in all the senses of that word to realize virtue, to realize wisdom.
As you're talking, I keep thinking about like how Heidegger talks about like the event of philosophy, the event of truth, right? The event, everything that you're saying, like both the content and the description of the experience of saying it and realizing it shows itself to me as like it's a happening, right? This kind of opening up.
It's wonderful. It's full of wonder. And so we all came away from that charged, like really energized, and also in the ancient sense of charged, like obligation. So and you know, and there was a lot about doing that and then directing it towards, you know, X risk factors, ameliorating the meaning crisis, addressing the meta crisis, which I think are absolutely central and important. So those were the three main events. And then tomorrow I fly out to Thunder Bay for the conference on consciousness and conscience, and I'm going to be doing entering hopefully into Dialogos with Paul Vanderklay and Jonathan Pajot in person.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
So
Fantastic.
I've been calling this my Thunderbolt summer, but
Yeah,
it's bleeding into it's
absolutely.
bleeding in September. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just glad that that's all that's coming together, and we're just going to funnel all of it into this 2-day experience that we have.
Yes.
Dialect
Yes.
Dialogos,
Very much.
right? Yeah, it's interesting. Very, like, really interesting. So many different things there that we're going to go into. I want to go in deeper with you. But I think we should probably bring this to a completion. I know that you have to go here pretty soon.
Yeah, but I'm glad we had this opportunity to
Yeah, me
uh,
too.
I mean, and I want people to know, you and Chris released a video. I was absent because I was involved in
Yeah.
all of this stuff. And yeah, and so, yeah, this is, I have a strong sense of a clear growth arc for dialectic into Dialogos. And I'm excited to get involved in the workshop again and get that in and start working on the second tier course with you and Chris,
Yes.
and your team. So
Can't wait.
I'm really juiced and jazzed to get into this.
I can't wait. And then probably by the next one, we may actually have the digital town square of the Ecology of Practices set up and ready to go. So one of the things that we'll be able to do is, once that's set up, where it's like people pay like a modest membership fee, and then we're going to have the Ecology of Practices layered throughout the day, every day.
Yeah.
Circling and all kinds of different practices going on throughout the day that people just are part of a membership and show up and can do all of this all day long if you want, every day. So that's going to be available. That'll be available probably after, not this one. We'll probably have it set up after the next dialectic in the Dialogos, so people can just roll into that. So really good. So many good things going on.
Yeah, so much. Yeah, it's very exciting, Guy. I'm looking forward to this weekend too. I mean, the weekend of the workshop.
Yes, right on. Okay, first and second, all the links are below to register.
Come and catch fire. Come on, come and catch fire.
Let's do it. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.